Welcome to the Vows Podcast. I'm Ben.
And I'm Macy.
And we hope to connect you with some of the best wedding vendors in the Central Texas area.
While you're planning your own wedding, we desire for you to learn about the wedding industry and make your wedding planning a bit easier and less stressful. You'll learn about what really goes into being a wedding vendor and why we do the things that we do, all while getting to know each vendor on a more personal level. So thanks for joining us and enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the Vows Podcast, our very, second episode.
Second episode, yep.
And our first with a special guest. We have Georgia Crowhurst of Earle Harrison House. She's the site manager. Welcome.
Thank you.
And then we're going to add a little applause.
Yeah.
Applause.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here today.
Good. How does it feel to be our first guest?
I'm extremely honored.
The pressure's on.
The pressure is on. Absolutely.
Well, awesome. Well, we have some questions for you, and basically we just want to kind of educate.
Where were you the night of?
Yeah, seriously. What were you doing last night at 11 p.m.?
Hey, y'all didn't tell me this was a crime podcast.
Literally.
Yeah, it's a plot twist.
Yeah, plot twist. But basically, we just kind of want to educate couples and, just other vendors as well about what it takes to run a venue. And then have clients and book those clients and all the things, like everything you can think of, we want to cover with you. So we love your expertise and you have a lot of experience. So we just kind of want to pick at your brain today. Are you okay with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, awesome.
Take away.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm gonna let Ben go.
Yeah, just kind of tell us about yourself, your background, and how long you've been doing this, what it looks like for you on like a daily basis. I mean, today you're kind of running around.
Yeah, we've seen you run around all day long.
And it's not like one building either. It's how many acres? Like 5?
We're a bit unique. We're over 5 acres of actual grounds with a couple of extra acres for parking. So a total of about 7.5 acres.
Which is crazy that it's in the heart of downtown and there's 7 acres. You got to think about how much is around here.
Right.
That's like not heard of, I feel like, right over here.
No, a lot of people have no clue
what's
behind the fencing.
Yeah, and that's because there's fencing around the whole area, and you're driving by without thinking about it, and then
we've seen 7 gates.
Yeah,
to this property. I'm like, which one do we go in?
But once you come in, it's just just beautiful. The grass, it's very green. And
in the middle of summer, mind you, it's very green, very live out here, which is hard. That just shows how much y'all keep up this place.
Well, and that's a real compliment for us, especially right now, because as we get into stories, you'll hear where we've been over the last, say, 5 years, which has been quite a journey for us.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that.
So have you? How long have you been here?
I've been site manager here for almost 2 years now.
Okay.
I've been aware of the property and knew the previous site managers very well for about the last 7 years.
What brought you into this specific role?
Well, I have worked for Historic Waco, and I knew the previous site managers. After COVID hit, they decided to retire, and so I began a campaign to say, please pick me, please
so you
me.
ran. You did a whole entire campaign.
Okay, so the Earle Harrison Pape Gardens is run by a board. Okay. So I began with a simple letter to the board. Found out one of the board members, sent him a letter, followed up, and I didn't hear anything after 3 follow-ups. So I marched my happy self to his office.
I love it.
Here, still COVID. Put my mask on, went into the office.
Which, that's brave. I'm just saying, good for you.
No one wanted to touch anything.
Yeah, and you're but I'm here, listen to me.
So I handed my correspondence that I had been emailing with no response. I handed my correspondence to the guy at the front desk, and he said, well, let me scan it and send it to him. He's out of the state right now. I got out of my car. Out of the office, got in my car, and I had just pulled back onto 4th Street, and I get a telephone call from the board. And it was just one of the guys that sits on the board. So that kind of started the ball rolling. Yeah. And then Historic Waco and the Pape Foundation became, they went into talks as far as how we were going to do this together. So we partnered together that Historic Waco would actually be the ones to manage it. and I would be the site manager over all of that.
That is so neat. Wow. I would have never have guessed it worked that way.
Yes.
I guess how it came about. So what did you do before this? Did you ever see yourself being a site manager? Is this something that like you've always thought about?
No, yes and no.
Yeah.
So back in the day, my kids, I have one married, one that's not married yet, but back in the day.
Is the one that's not married a girl?
Yes.
Sorry, Ben, I love you.
Okay, Ben. She's 22. She's getting her doctorate.
Ooh, I love that.
This is the real mission of the podcast.
Yeah, this is Ben needs to get married. It's my mission in life. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
No. So back in the day when my kids were younger, I helped at church doing weddings at our church.
Oh, so you've always had
different.
Oh.
Yes, I've always, so I loved doing that.
Yeah.
But that was so totally different than what we have today. Very few of our brides currently get married in a church. Most of them do everything on our property and in many other venues. So it was quite different.
Yeah.
But I always had this little, want deep in my heart to buy a wedding venue.
Oh, yeah, me and you are on the same page. I understand.
And my husband and I even looked at one about 8 years ago or so that was for sale outside of Houston, and we could live on property, and it had been a venue in the past. So after that, but we decided it wasn't the right timing for us to do that. And then it wasn't long after that the previous site managers were talking about retiring. So that was when I thought, okay, this is it.
Okay,
let's
my
do
name
this.
in.
I love that. Yeah.
Well, it's also
awesome.
really brave to do it during a time like during COVID that was so like unknown. So like you definitely had a lot of faith going into that. Like you could tell like with your ambition, like you were going to make it work.
Well, I knew there was so much potential here.
Oh, yeah.
And the previous site managers had been here so long that it was a different feel.
Sure, yeah.
So it was a feel of weddings 15 years ago. It was very farmhouse and rustic feel. The decor that she would do, the things that were around the property, lots of metal art and whiskey barrels and wooden benches.
I guess I would never have guessed that.
I know.
That is a total like.
It did to me.
I'm sure it was beautiful, but
yeah.
I what you have here, I see it being like it's very intentional with the property.
And we're working towards an even more elegant look, which is where we're going.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen some weddings that have happened here, and they are like beautiful, stunning. Like there is a vibe for sure.
Well, we're just tickled pink to be able to.
Oh, I love that.
Move that. And
cute.
I say that because Nell Pape is the lady who brought all of this property together. She's really the one who funded everything. Her favorite color was pink. So in the months and years to come, you're going to see a lot more pink in our more formal gardens, which I believe when you guys got here this morning, I was just wrapping up with the McLennan County Master Gardeners, and they are sponsoring one of our new flower beds, which will be a formal garden. Whereas previously, we really had lost a lot of the more formal gardens. And when the previous site managers left after COVID hit, the board didn't hire anyone during that time. And so it sat for about 2.5 years without anyone taking care of it, other than they did have a yard crew that would come and just do the maintenance, but nothing more than the basics.
Level,
just surface level. So if a water break would, we had multiple irrigation leaks over those couple of years, freezes, snowmageddon.
Freeze! I remember that. That was brutal.
Yes, all of those things affected our property significantly, and so water was turned off to much of the property for over a year.
Wow.
That caused a lot of our flower beds, trees, shrubs, to really suffer from that drought that we were going through. And then we come in and we hit full-fledged drought where we were limited on the amount of water that we could use.
Oh, man.
So we really had to juggle that. So when Historic Waco took over and I stepped foot, it was in early 2023. And that was a bit shocking when we walked in. I had been here in December of 22 for a Christmas on the Brazos celebration. And then I came in probably late January, early February. And I walked in through the doors into the dining room right over here. And I stumbled. The floors had buckled from a water leak. And so immediately we've had to focus on this house.
Right.
And this house is called the Earle Harrison House. This house was built in 1857.
Wow.
It is arguably the oldest standing home in Waco. It's the only antebellum home in Waco still standing. It originally sat down at I-35 and 4th Street. So right where In-N-Out Burger and Chipotle
That is crazy.
sits.
Wow. That's
So in
wild.
1967, Mrs. Pape bought the house and moved it to this current location.
How did they even move a house back then? You got to think about like what they didn't have.
Yeah. Well,
They
they...
just took
pushed
100
it.
people.
Like-
100 people lift.
Well, and it's funny because just earlier today we were speaking with the 94-year-old neighbor over here, and she was talking about the move, and because she witnessed it, she saw it.
That is
being-
insane to me.
Yeah, and it got stuck because it started raining.
Oh,
and she
gosh.
said, her words were, "It was raining cats and dogs." And she said, "That means a lot of rain."
Like, we're picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. I get what
that-
you're
This is
saying.
really
Yeah.
sweet.
That's sweet. Just want to make sure she's
Make
clear.
sure you understand what cats and dogs
That's
meant.
hilarious.
Yeah, so they took off the 9 columns, took off the roof, and basically folded in
What?
the top. Yeah, and then
It's like a little
they
paper
moved it.
house. Like
Right,
they just like
it's-
moved it.
Yeah.
That's wild.
So it was
How do you-
completely restored in 1967 through 1970 when it reopened to the public
Wow.
and became
So,
part of this.
What was it during that time? Like, was it just like a bed and breakfast? Like, what did they use it for back then? Did they use it for weddings? Was that common?
Back in 1967?
Yeah.
It was an In-N-Out. It was the very first In-N-Out.
Very first in and out.
Yeah.
We're gonna get sued. The drive-thru does it as a letter.
The drive-through was right over here.
Yeah.
They used the home primarily for garden parties.
Oh my gosh, how cute.
The garden clubs of McLennan County, sometimes that's hard to say fast.
It is.
The garden clubs of McLennan County and Waco were huge back in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s. It didn't start to die out until in the 80s. But the ladies of the garden clubs hosted numerous events throughout the year for the community, and it was just a place for the ladies to go. It was
Aw.
the thing to be in the garden clubs back in the day.
I would be in a garden club back in the day. I would be. That sounds like a blast.
So they would hold their events in this house. They also wanted to restore this house and preserve the history part. So that comes in the history piece of
It's
this.
kind of funny how like you can tell with like all the stories that like no matter what, there's been someone who wants to keep the history in this house. Imagine it being completely torn apart. Like, what are the odds of it actually being so good to this day? You know what I mean?
And it was
It's not that
very
common.
No, it's really not.
Like,
And-
what if someone bought the house? Or like, you just imagine just how amazing it is to have all this history in one place.
yeah.
You know, that's not just,
Yeah, and it was
a museum.
almost destroyed. The house was.
See, I can imagine like how close at times it might have happened.
Yeah, it was really. It was in the works to be taken down.
That's awful. I'm so
So
glad
Nell
it made it.
Pape and Bobby Barnes, that was her best friend in the garden club. So the two of those ladies were responsible
Yeah,
for
they were like,
saving.
do
it.
not touch
awesome.
our house.
Yeah.
Right.
This is our house.
So what about like all the other houses around? Did they build around there, or were they already here, or?
Most of the houses Nell Pape had already purchased. A lot of them were in really bad shape and being torn down. It was during a time that a lot of new development was occurring in this area from people moving from the Urban Renewal Project down near Baylor. So a lot of the houses that were not in the greatest shape were being either moved or torn down.
Wow. I'm just so glad this made it.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
never know. just someone's thought could have changed everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
And it really was this close to
That's crazy.
not making it. But Nell Pape and Bobby Barnes wanted to save this house.
I love that you know so much about this place, because it really just shows like your love for this home and then the property and stuff like that.
Yeah. Did you have to like take a test beforehand? Like,
Yeah,
make
what
sure
did
you
you
knew
do?
all the facts.
Yeah.
I actually knew very little in comparison to what I know now.
Sure.
Right.
The history is very rich. Of course, I've always had a passion for history. So.
Yeah, I have a question. Have you ever found anything here in this home that like dates really far back, or anything like a little, like anything that you've noticed in the house since you've been here?
Yes, absolutely. Probably because the home was really completely reconstructed between 1967 and 1970. We didn't get to see what it looked like back, when they were doing that. It wasn't a big deal probably to them. It was just old wood.
Sure.
So when we had the water leak in here and the floors all buckled, all of the floors in this room had to be removed, and they were not usable. So we saved the wood, and we're repurposing it in our new bridal suite.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So under here, there are beams that are huge. I am not a construction person, but the beams are absolutely massive under this house, and they were hand sawed back in the 1800s.
Hand saw.
Wow.
Yes. So our contractor that was here, his father was in town, and he was commenting on these beams and pointing out the age. We also found lots of square nails, which is what they used back in the 1800s.
Little square nails.
Interesting.
Interesting enough, I was just in the attic of the other big house.
Is it creepy?
It wasn't. It was.
haunted?
Tell me the truth.
I was really scared to go up in it.
I would be too. I would be too.
We just put in an HVAC system upstairs over there. It's never had
Oh wow.
air or heat, and the contractor, our HVAC guy, said, "Come on up, look what we've done." Because it took him like 3 weeks to do that, and I'm like, "I trust you. As long as there's cold air coming out of those vents,
I trust you.
That's all I really need to know." And so anyway, he put a ladder up there, and I crawled up 14 feet to go through a hole at the top of the roof or of the ceiling, and there was lots of those similar beams, not quite as big as what was underneath here, but square nails just laying around. That house was built in 1874.
Wow.
So both of these homes were built in the 1800s, with this one being the oldest. Other than that, old things that we have found, there's still some original glass in the other house, not in this house that I'm aware of, probably because this house was moved and the glass probably would not have survived.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but we have found old bottles, old tools.
That is so neat. I love that.
Yeah.
The little time capsules.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's been really cool.
Definitely.
That's kind of how I think of photos, like time
Yeah.
capsules. It's kind of like the same thing. Super cool. I love that.
Yeah, you just take photos and then hide them like in the,
Yep,
in
hide
the
'em.
attic and
Scary photos, and people have to find them. They're like, oh my gosh.
It was very interesting because on some of the boards under the house, there was handwriting.
Okay,
on some
that
of
would
the
creep me
boards.
out. That would creep. It's cool, but
it
it
was
would
like
be a little freaky.
It was like their calculations.
Yeah.
It was like how they were cutting. They
Oh,
were
gotcha.
calculating
That's
on
so
the
crazy.
And it was like the
I'm like, just take a
handwriting.
photo of it back in the day.
Yeah, the handwriting didn't even look like handwriting today.
That's
it was
insane.
obviously very old.
Yeah, it had
Wow.
to have been.
That's wild.
Nuts.
Yeah, well, fast forward to today and kind of what you've been doing, keeping up with the estate and kind of what your vision is for the future. I know you mentioned kind of more elegant and
Right. So our goals are multifold right now. We're trying to restore the gardens to a more formal look versus the more natural, zero-scaped look that we kind of walked into. So the formal gardens will see a lot more color. We'll have both annuals and perennials, but we want to honor Nell Pape and bring back the color. There's not been a lot of color in the gardens until this past year. So by spring of 2025, we should be a significant difference in what you see.
So we got to come back. We got to come back and
Yeah,
just do a full circle moment.
Yes,
I'm excited for that.
absolutely.
So how many weddings would you say you have a year here?
Oh gosh. So it's hard to say where we're going to end up at.
Sure.
Right.
But in the spring, we do, I would say, maybe 12.
That's good.
Spring, early summer, fall, just a handful in the fall. And a lot of that is because we've been under construction. So we haven't had the opportunity to really be ready to show off.
Yeah, and I'm sure when you open your books fully, it'll be people will jump in. I definitely think, and when we chatted on the phone prior to this, we were talking about how like this place is such a hidden gem. And I feel like it's definitely one of those things like people might not see in Waco, but if you know about it, you know about it. Right. But also, like, what is one way that people tend to find you in this building?
A lot of is word of mouth, because a lot of people, even some famous people, Chip and Joanna Gaines got married here.
Oh.
That is a really cool fact.
I did their wedding. I remember that.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Chip and Joanna sue him.
So a lot of people know us by they've been here to a wedding at some point in time, because weddings have been going on here for 20, 30 years maybe.
Yeah, wow.
A lot of the previous site manager, I couldn't even tell you what year they started doing weddings. Sure. But as the 80s faded and the garden clubs faded, that was when the board needed something to help support this foundation and carry on Mrs. Pape's foundation. So that's when they moved more into a wedding venue, events.
Gotcha.
But they wanted to do more than just weddings.
Yeah, I could see that. That's really awesome. I remember seeing on Instagram a wedding that happened here, and I just saw how beautiful it was that they did. That I couldn't tell you the names. They weren't my clients or anything, but they did the garden party outside with like the long table.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so beautiful. Just like the details were insane of like you could tell someone was an interior designer along the line somewhere, and they had like the blue florals. I mean, it was just stunning, and it just like with the house, it was like it looked like it could be in a magazine.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite weddings here
as well.
I know exactly which wedding you're talking about. And the interesting part of that wedding was the bride is a Harrison descendant. This house, Earle Harrison. So the wife of Dr. Earle is a Harrison. So her name was Eliza Harrison Earle, and the bride for that wedding was a Harrison descendant.
Wow.
That's
crazy.
Insane.
That's super cool.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah, she was our only bride so far to get married on this side of the gazebo. Most of our brides get married deep down under the century-year-old oak trees on the other side of the gazebo.
Right. Okay.
So this past spring we had 2 weddings that were on the opposite side.
Gotcha.
So that the Earle Harrison House was even more so in their background.
Yeah, I mean that's like the whole point to me, would have this like beautiful white just like pillar house like in the background. Like that's just stunning.
Yeah.
And some of it could have been that people didn't choose that area of our venue because the grass was dead for the first year.
We also understand, like, people who are in Texas understand how extreme this weather can be.
Right.
It changes on a daily basis, by the minute, and when the heat is here, it is here, and it is fiery.
It is.
So, I mean, I can't even keep my yard. My front yard is dead. So I can imagine having the pressure of a venue garden and all that stuff. I mean, that's insane.
Our water bill is not cheap.
Oh,
yeah.
I could not imagine. No thanks. I don't want
it. So what are some of the like amenities that couples can expect when they come here?
Okay, so some of the things are still a work in progress right now,
right.
With the goal to be finished by the end of October of this year. So we have a new groom's retreat. It's an entire house that they get.
Wow. The girls will love that. The
that's
guys
a lot better than a
that.
closet.
Yeah.
Listen, yeah, and that's when like that's a huge benefit because I'm sure Ben has too. Like we've shot a few weddings together, and there's a lot of times where they barely have any space, but a lot of times it's just not something they can help. And it's like no shame to anybody else, but the space is so appreciated.
And guys are just easy, so it's like
guys are very easy. And in the past, they had a very small little building with a restroom in the back. And one of our maybe our second or third wedding that we had here, I went in there after the wedding had already started, and the guys had left, of course, all their stuff. But I'm trying to get a feel for, what the brides and what the grooms need, what they want.
Yeah, like a different point of view.
Yeah, it's kind of look, and so I walk in there, and the bathroom sinks were filled with ice with beer in every sink.
Well, that gave you a clue.
Yeah, so that gave me an instant clue.
Yeah, thank you for the idea. You could have.
We need a beverage.
Just holler.
Yeah.
You don't gotta do that. You can just holler.
I don't know where they were washing their hands, but
yeah.
So we do have the groom. I'm going to start on this end of the property and work my way up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the groom's retreat, I'm not sure what we'll end up calling it. Right now we're calling it the groom's retreat, is on one end of the property. So we want to keep them separated if they choose to
great.
be.
Very, very valid and a good idea.
They're not even close to each other. Next to the groom's room, which is our groom's retreat, the old groom's room is now going to be our green room, because we do have a number of brides that bring in pretty sizable bands, and they really need a place to have to hang out in.
That's awesome.
But it can be used for any number of things. So we do have that area as well. Then we have the historic home, the Earle Harrison House, which we will sometimes, for smaller weddings, we can do tours if the bride requests that ahead of time, and we make arrangements for that. We also have a commercial kitchen. It's just a prep kitchen, so there's no cooking, but we do have commercial refrigeration for florals and for their cakes.
Nice.
So we have that. All that is on one end of the property. Then as you walk towards the garden tent and through the gardens, you go towards what we call the Pape House. It's also, historically speaking, is known as the Johnson Taylor House. It was built in 1874. It has always sat there, so it's never moved. That is where our bridal suite will be, upstairs.
Okay.
Nice.
It's currently under construction, and like I said, we should be done by the end of October. We'll have 2 new restrooms put upstairs. We also have a full bridal suite with 2 very large rooms with 14-foot ceilings. Spiral staircase.
I could imagine the bridals here.
Yeah.
Bridals.
It's gonna be beautiful over there. If the bride does not want to go upstairs, because we have had a few brides, they're a little concerned with their dresses or making that trip up the stairs. We have an alternate bridal suite downstairs. Which
you don't hear about that at all. It's usually like one-stop shop. Take it or you leave it.
Well, we try to accommodate. That same area is pretty much a flex area as well.
Awesome.
So sometimes the vendors use that as their staging area.
We
too.
literally were talking about vendor rooms and how, like, we know, like, when you go to a venue and you're like, they got a vendor room?
Yeah, that's like...
They've got a vendor room. Okay, we're bougie today.
Yeah.
We're like, ooh, they've got money.
They got outlets to charge things.
You got a table?
Yeah, a table's a big deal.
That's insane. Yeah, like you put
It's like
all of
the
our
little
wagons.
things. Yeah.
Our wagons.
Yeah.
You know where the vendors are when you find a bunch of wagons.
Oh, yes.
Like, yep, they're in there.
And they do need wagons here.
Yeah, you got to use some wagons. You don't want to carry it.
You definitely need a wagon here.
I love that.
So we have 2 areas that our vendors typically hang out in. If the bride is not using the event hall, it's an 1,800 square foot event hall with a stage. That's where most of our vendors choose to hang out because it's plenty of space.
Right. Yeah. It's a big.
See that stuff?
Room.
You can't. The people can't see it, but the stuff behind the camera,
right?
It takes a lot of space.
It really does.
Takes a lot of space.
Yeah, definitely. Well, for video. Yeah.
For video, I just bring my backpack. That's all I need. Well, that's super awesome. I think that's really cool to, like, there's so many different types of venues. there's our modern day venues, modern farmhouse venues, modern industrial venues. I mean, there's all kinds of venues, but I do feel like historical venues you don't hear as much of. They're definitely, I think,
especially in Waco. Like, you don't really think of Waco to have this type of place.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we really hope to become that spot in Waco, the heart of Central Texas, where brides can pull from Dallas, Austin, Houston.
Yeah, you're in a very good central zone.
Mm-hmm. We're right in the middle of it all, and we really hope by adding these extra options for the brides to have more space, not just have a small room to get ready in.
Yeah, you have 7 acres, brides.
Right.
7 acres.
One for each bridesmaid.
Yeah, one for each bridesmaid. It's pretty good to me. Well, I think that's super fun. I'm so glad we got to meet and chat. I know I'm sure not done yet, but I've just been in all of this place. You can tell like there's so many moving parts. There's so many people who are dedicated to this space, and it's just seriously beautiful.
Yeah. How many people are there that will, I guess, on staff? I don't know how,
like what,
how
50
that works.
a day? It feels like there's staff. A lot of you.
Well, I'm the only one that's on site on a regular basis. However, Historic Waco, which is that's the heart of who we are right now, is Historic Waco. Our executive director is Eric Swanson, and he leads a massive team of about 4 of us.
Okay, you got me there. I was like,
I know, it's like, hey,
1,000. 4. Well, definitely, I feel like you'll have to have 10 hands.
We have a lot of help. So to be fair, we do have a lot of people that help us as far as our gardeners, our handy guys that help us out with all of the repairs. It's always something.
Oh, I can imagine.
With an old house, we're always making repairs.
Y'all definitely seem to carry it very well because, I think a lot of times, like when we shoot weddings and stuff like that, we can notice chaos very easily, especially when you're behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I think it's so cool that y'all have... Yeah, and I know it's always different. I know, like, personally, you're like, sometimes I bet you feel like this day is going crazy. But, like, it's really cool to see you just, like, maintain it so well. And, like, your presence is always really calming. It's just nice to see because a lot of times people can't, so not everyone can handle all that. I couldn't.
Yeah.
It is a lot. And
you handle it very well, I could imagine.
Well, the very first thing that we decided that we were going to require of our brides is you have to have a planner. We will not do a wedding unless you have a planner. Absolutely. We also are very flexible. We want this to be laid back, and we'll do whatever that bride wants. If she wants, no matter what she wants, we'll make it happen. And we have the connections to help her make that happen. But we do not require that you use any, we don't have a preferred vendor list that we require you to use.
That is nice. I've heard, some vendors, some brides and grooms can't do that.
Right. Well, and we sometimes get brides or grooms that have special requests. We have one right now that's going to be a very large wedding in the spring. And his nationality, he really wants one particular
I can imagine.
Restaurant to cater out of Dallas. And so absolutely, that can definitely
It's hard
happen.
when you put restraints on stuff like that. Yeah. You unfortunately, I think you lose more business than you gain sometimes. And especially, I feel like I've noticed a lot of brides, say if they splurge on their venue, because your venue does set the tone of your wedding day.
Right.
I think that's very, very good for couples to know that, like, your venue sets the tone of your wedding day, right? Especially for your photography. I don't know about video. You can pitch in if you want.
I mean,
well, for me,
it's still the same,
Well, if you want light and airy, you pick a venue that's light and airy. Or if you want, like, a dark, more Western venue, you're going to go for hardwood and dark wood. Just something that's a little bit more barn-like, stuff like that. That's pretty common. But I forgot what I was talking about. What were we talking about?
Yes.
We're talking about
or just how the venue sets the feel.
Yeah, it sets the feel. Yes. Thank you, Georgia. Sets the feel, and I definitely, that's all I have to say because I don't know where I'm at.
Well, garden weddings, that's what we really want to strive for.
Yeah.
I love that.
And with the historical aspect, which not everybody in Waco can offer. So we're really excited to boast the new renovations at both of the mansions, both what happened here in the Earle Harrison, even though it wasn't a planned reno.
Sure. Yeah.
But the Johnson Taylor house, also, or the Pape house, that was more planned, but we felt like that was something that was needed in today's market, and to really make sure that we had what the brides wanted: makeup bar, plenty of light, enough room to spread out.
Yeah.
And we
Definitely sounds like you're working with the times.
Well, we're trying, that's for sure. So.
Which says a lot, though. I mean, if you're keeping the home, like, it's true, like, historical vision, and then you're also working with modern times, that's hard.
Yeah.
That's a hard mix.
It is.
But y'all do it well.
Well, we're certainly giving it our all.
Doing it well.
I guess as far as like couples, when they inquire, are you getting a lot of the same questions, or what are they asking about, or what is something that you wish or you want your couples to know?
I think one of the biggest questions we get is about our vendor list. Do we require that the bride uses just our preferred vendors? And we absolutely do not require that. We do require that they provide us a certificate of insurance. We require that they follow our rules of, even the state rules, TABC rules, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that's probably our biggest question is, can they bring their own vendors in? And we've had everything from food trucks to very formal.
That's fun. Yeah.
We've had food trucks set up in the Circle Drive and all the way to very formal sit-down meals.
I love that. I like that y'all are so flexible with that, for sure, because it's hard for people to always stick to a list.
Yeah. Well, we want them to be happy, and it's their choice what they want to put together, and we want to make that happen. So
what is something that you could tell your brides as a pro tip of when you're looking at a venue in general? What would be like one of your questions that you would want your brides to ask a potential venue for them? Like, would you say, for example, do you have a backup plan if it rains, or stuff like that?
If you're going to have an outdoor wedding, that is probably one of the most important questions. There's a lot of places that you can do an outdoor garden wedding, but what do you do if it's really storming, and how do you deal with that?
We're in Texas.
Yeah, we are in Texas. For us, that is something that we discuss with every one of our brides. We always want them to have a backup plan. And we do have a 2,000 square foot indoor event hall that they can use as a backup plan.
So it just keeps going.
Indoors.
It just keeps going.
But 2,000 square feet is not huge if you've got a really large wedding.
Sure.
And you want to do everything in there. So we have to be creative sometimes and figure out ways to work around that. We also have a 60 foot by 90 foot garden tent that stays up year round. So the majority of our weddings can be undercover regardless.
That's nice.
We have never, knock on wood, had a wedding that we had to really completely move indoors for that reason. We've had a couple that it's rained, but they've all made the best of it. And really, it's a workaround for us, but that is important for any bride to know when they're choosing their location.
Good. I think that's awesome. I feel like that's a really good pro tip to have, because every venue is just so different.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Hire me to work here, please. Brides, hire Macy Kazan Photography at the Earle Harrison.
I think that's about it. Was there anything else that you wanted to say that we haven't asked about?
I can't think of anything. I think the outdoor thing that's a big one, and then vendors. Those are two questions that I probably get the most.
For any of the couples watching or listening, what would be the best way to get into contact with you?
The best way is to contact us through our website, which is earleharrisonhouse.com. And it is Earle, E-A-R-L-E, Harrison, H-A-R-R-I-S-O-N.
I'm glad you said that, because that's a very valid thing. I wouldn't have thought of the E.
Yeah, I just want to make
you're
sure
like, just double check.
I make sure. No, I was going to make sure it's .com, because you can also find us on historicwaco.org. But historicwaco.org is totally separate from the Earle Harrison House website. So, but they do link together.
Perfect. Y'all have a Facebook and Instagram?
We have Instagram.
So maybe follow them on Instagram.
Follow us on Instagram. You may also see there's 2 Instagrams, but there's only one that there's any posts on, so it's pretty obvious which Instagram it is.
Yeah, well, for sure. Well, I think couples can find a lot of good information here and have some really good experienced individuals here running this beautiful place. So I think it's awesome that what y'all are doing, and I love that y'all are such a big part of Waco, and it's really beautiful. And I would love to see a wedding myself here. So come stand outside and watch it.
Just over the fence.
Yeah, if you don't hire me, I will be here. I will still be here. No, but seriously, it's very beautiful, and what y'all have done here is just, it's beautiful that y'all have kept it up so well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you for being the first guest on
thank you for having
the
me.
podcast.
I'm so honored that you guys chose us.
Good. I mean, so I think this was the best way we could have kicked it off.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, you guys both do such amazing work. I can't wait to see.
Oh, thank you.
This is going to take off. Y'all are going to do really well.
Thank you. We're excited.
Great idea.
Yeah. Well, we didn't record. This was just a practice run, so we didn't record it.
Yeah. So. Let's take that again.
Yeah.
Take 2.
We'll do the real one here. So.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us on the Vendor Vows podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to follow us on Spotify, Instagram, and TikTok, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel.
If you have any questions you'd like us to answer, or if you're a vendor and would like to be featured on an upcoming episode, please shoot us an email at vendorvowspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one.